The goal will be to basically wax a board. We'll go through the process of waxing a board so that if you want to, you can wax yourself. So let's now get into the materials. We're back. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is clean the base. So you need some base cleaner. Now, you can spend 30, 40 bucks on some base cleaner, the special kind of base cleaner, or you can go out and get Goof Off or Gooby Gone or any citrus-based cleaner, and it'll accomplish the same job. Then you'll need a nasty rag. There's our nasty rag. Once your base is clean, you need to inspect it. If the base is really natty, I mean, we're talking gouges, then you're gonna have to go into a P-Tech. In that case, you're gonna wanna use a lighter, which is all of maybe like 5 bucks, all right? And then you're gonna need to use a P-Tech stick. Those are a little more expensive. P-Tech sticks can run between $10 to $25 upwards, depending on the P-Techs. Obviously, we got Swix. Then we're gonna cut to a bad, nasty base so that you can see a board that has P-Techs in it as well as dings. Okay, so to show you the P-Techs, right here, there is a huge gouge when I hit an actual race plastic nubby.
I think you have to tell the story.
All right, no, I won't go into that story today, but I hit the nubby and it put a huge gouge into my board and it was gigantic. Other people have hit rocks, and then you see here where we'd have to fill it in to use this board. Now, I can't use this board anymore because on the other side, right here, you can see that we have absolutely dented the
didn't help.
Rail. So this is a huge dent. It's causing a crack in the metal edging. It's really not safe to use this board anymore. So we don't actually use this board, but it's a great demonstration of when you need to put P-Techs into your board and what that would look like. Obviously, it's a clear P-Techs. Once the P-Techs in, it should stay, but it can pop out periodically. You have to refix it. Okay. The next thing you're going to need is you're going to need wax. We have two types of wax. We have warm weather wax, cold weather wax. When we use the warm weather wax, is basically anything from beginning season all the way up until it goes into negative digits. When it goes negative digits, that is when you'll want the cold wax, which is the blue wax, but you're not gonna do the whole board with the blue wax. You're gonna do the edges and the middle of the board. The other part of the board will be the yellow wax. If it is not negative digits, you only need to use the warm wax. Exactly. You can get an all-season wax if you don't want to bother with that. It's a little cheaper, but the problem with an all-season wax is that it doesn't do very good in the cold weather. And in the Wisconsin cold weather, when it gets single digits, the snow dries out so bad. And when it gets that way, it's so dry it doesn't melt. And when it doesn't melt, your board don't slide. And when your board don't slide, it's not fun. Then what you're gonna need is an iron to apply the wax. And if you notice, that is not an iron for ironing hot wax boards. No, you can buy an iron for like 50, 60 bucks, or you can buy that one, which I got for like 10 to 15 bucks.
And it does wonders.
At Walgreens, Walmart, Shopko, Target, whatever your discount store is, you can buy a cheap iron. And that iron is basically around 15 years old and it still works. Your settings, if you look closely, will be between 1 and 2. You don't want to go hotter than 2 because it's too hot. You don't got to go 1 because then it doesn't melt wax. The next piece of material that you're going to need, your Scotch-Brite, your scraper, and a horsehair brush. The choice you have here, that is the cheapest direction you can go for waxing. You could probably even get away without having to have these scrapers if you wanted. However, it's easier with the scrapers. If you have a little more money and can spend some on a drill-based brush set, which is what we have here, right? We have a nylon and a horsehair brushing. If you can do that, then you just need a drill. And you can get that drill for 15 bucks at a place like a Menards or a Home Depot. Don't spend any more because you just need speed between 127 to 2700 RPMs. This one goes up to 300 or 3000 RPMs. So these are your materials. Oh, and you might want to get a extension cord. But those are your base materials. Now, next, or wax board, sorry. The next comes the table. If you see here, I have jerry rigged a table together because I don't have a table. Drywall, sorry.
This drywall.
And then I have my storage tubs, and I put my board holder on the storage tubs. Now it has a beanie on, just so you know continuity. We also had to move the actual system that we have for actually holding the board. Right now, this is not the board we're gonna wax, but I wanted to show you that you can build yourself your own board holder. We built the distance from each of these pole wood pieces. That's where your bindings fit in. That allows you then to take, if you put the board in, it slides in, boom. You can see that the board and the bindings fit in. Then if you need to, you can take bungees and put bungees around the bindings to hold the board into place. A lot of times we don't need to, especially if you're riding a wider stance, like 22 to 21, all the way up to a 23 will fit in there and such it'll be tight enough that you won't have to. Okay, the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna clean your base. So we've got the goo spray. We spray it on the board just like so, right? And then what we do is we take the rag and we clean up the board with the wax, or with the spray. So clean the board. Once it's clean, you're gonna check it out, just look at it. Let it dry a few seconds. Once it's dry, then we can go into the ironing spot. Okay, now that we have the board clean, what we're gonna do is we're gonna apply the wax. So we'll take the iron and some wax. We're gonna apply it to the tip of the iron. So we're gonna turn the iron upside down and we're gonna drip the wax onto the board. And you just wanna drip it so it gently drips down and you just basically go along the board, right? You can do whatever pattern you want, but you just wanna drip the wax on the board. So apply it and just kind of hold it there and then let the wax drip. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna basically melt the wax into the board. And the key to melting the wax into the board is you're gonna heat the wax up and then check the board with your hand to make sure it's not too hot. Once it starts to warm up on that end, you're gonna move the iron down the board, slowly moving the wax in to the board. By heating up the wax that you placed on the board, and then when you feel the spot at where you're rubbing in the wax get hot, make sure that when you are waxing the board that you're getting the wax all the way out to the edges. So make sure that you're watching how the wax is getting applied. So the other thing you want to remember is not to wax the tip. There's an effective edge. That edge is right along here. That's as far as you go with the wax. You do not want to go to the tip or the tail. There's a line, you can see the line there. That's about the effective edge, where the edge stops and engages. That's the last piece of where you want to stop waxing. So once you're done waxing, and you're gonna let the board set until the wax dries. As you can see, you want to make sure that the wax is applied across the whole board, all the way out to the edges. Don't worry about the edges. And don't wax where Brecken's finger was. And then on either side, you're gonna go to that same point, not wax. Do not wax the tip and tail. Does not need it. Even if you're buttering, you really don't need any wax on the tip and tail. Never put any wax there. It really never dries out. Okay, folks. What we're gonna do is we're gonna show you how to scrape the board But the first thing we're going to show you how to do is clean the scraper. So you take one of your Scotch-Brites and just rub it along the edge of the scraper. This is a true snowboard scraper, obviously made by a company called Dakine. I will link to a similar one either by Burton or Dakine, does not matter. Either one will work and you can pick up. They're a little more expensive than the second one, which is the smaller version, which has an edge to it. Show them that point right there is actually to help clean off your metal edges. Let's start with the big edge. From here, you're gonna scrape the board. Now, you're gonna scrape either side when you're scraping, but you wanna get the wax off the board. So you're gonna have to apply aggressive pressure onto the board, which is one of the reasons why you may find to keep the board from punching up into the air, you strap it down. So continue to try to scrape off the board as much as you can. Now you may find that the bigger doesn't dig in enough. So that's where you can grab the smaller scraper and apply a little easier pressure and get in the middle as well as the end. You can use the smaller one and you can see it digs in a little bit better and a little bit easier than the larger scraper. And you can get a little bit more into scraping the board, but you do need to make it even and you want to avoid
splitting it down the middle.
The next thing you want to do is you want to take your shavings and move them into a trash bag or a plastic bag. So we're going to use the rotary brush because we have one, and we're going to show you how to use the rotary brush. You saw that if you scrape the board, you just spend your time scraping it till it's cleaned off, and then we're going to do the next step of the process once we think we have the whole thing scraped off. We're going to use the rotary brush to get the board to the point where we can show you what we'll do next, and we'll move to the next piece. When doing the rotary brush, you need a mask because it's going to throw a lot of filings out, and so we're both going to have masks on. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use the Scotch-Brite pads, and you want to use them in order. You go the oldest to the newest in terms of cleaning, because what happens is it builds up. The wax will literally build up on the pad. And so we start with the oldest and we just go scrape the board. And again, we're not worried about directional control here. We're just cleaning the board off. And what I like to do is from tip to tail or tail to tip, either way. My son is using a quote-unquote circular motion, which I probably would not recommend, but that's the key. The next thing you do is you're gonna apply a little pressure and push into those wax spots so that there aren't major lumps or bumps, and that may require a little bit of elbow grease. If you've scraped the board, which in essence we just did with the nylon brush of the rotor, you then need to go over it and clean up the extra wax. This is getting all that extra wax off of the board, and there is a lot of extra wax on this board.
So I relaxed it a lot.
We're going to be using a horsehair brush to put a little texture into the board. The horsehair brush will allow us to give that board. So now this one is very key. You do want to go tip to tail and be very specific. You want to apply pressure on this and push down pretty hard. Whatever helps you get through that and puts texture in the board. So this is the horsehair rotor brush that we're going to be using. And it's going to do the same thing. It's basically meant to apply texture. And go nice and even. So now we have a clean board. If you look close, you can see some structure, not the best, but we did the best we can. And again, this is supposed to be able to do on this inexpensive. So if you don't have a ton of money and you want to just do it yourself, pretty much it, that's the board. So that's waxing the board. Less proverbial than real, but we at least got our boards nice and waxed and set up so that now we can ride. All right, so we just learned how to wax our boards. So hopefully now what we can do is we'll be able to go out and do some riding pretty soon. As you can see behind me, it's still fall.